Today is the 110th Security Thought Leadership webinar. We've been here almost every Tuesday and Thursday for the last year or so, where we've been discussing a topic of importance to the security sector. And the idea of thought leadership is to critique today, to analyse, to think differently about what's going on in order we get a better type of security tomorrow. And today's topic emerged from previous webinars. And we've touched on this subject a number of times. What does a diverse workforce look like? What constitutes diverse? And how is the security sector faring up in trying to match it? And once again, I've got three panelists, all coming at this from slightly different angles, all with expertise in this area. And in a minute, I'm going to invite them to introduce themselves. And once we've met all three, we will then be inviting our panelists to make an opening statement, 3 minutes, where they get the chance to say whatever they want to say about the topic. While they're talking, if you would like to get your questions in using the question answer button at the bottom of your screen, we'll endeavour to incorporate that in the ensuing discussion, those we've got in advance. So without further ado then, I'm going to go to our panelists and invite them just to introduce themselves. And let's start off with Amanda. Amanda, please introduce yourself.
Thank you very much, first of all, for inviting me, Martin. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Amanda McCloskey. I'm the Sales and Marketing Director for CIS Security. The company was established 52 years ago now, so we're very prominent in the UK. I began my career within the industry as a HR manager 15 years ago this week, actually. A position that I held for 5 years, and gradually that role developed into business relationships and finally sales and marketing. We employ 1,600 plus people across the UK and provide a range of physical and technical security services.
Thank you very much indeed. So now let's go and meet Fidelma. Fidelma, please introduce yourself.
Hello everyone, I'm Fiona Ash. I'm an academic in Ulster University, which is based in Northern Ireland, and I specialise in peace building, which is related to my interest in security.
Thank you very much indeed. And finally, let's meet Emma. Emma, please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Martin. Hi everyone, my name's Emma Shaw. I'm the MD of Esoteric, which is a technical countermeasures, counter-eavesdropping company. I undoubtedly probably know many of you that are on the call today, having previously been chairman of the Security Institute and of course involved with other organisations and professional associations. My background is UK government and prior to that UK military, and I've now been working in the commercial sector for, dare I admit it, about 25 years now.
Goodness me, that seems a long time. Things I could have said there, but I won't. Thank you very much indeed. Appreciate that. So let's now we've met our panel. As you know, our practice is we go to each of the panelists and ask them for their opening statement, 3 minutes, where they get to say whatever they want to say about this topic. So let's first of all go to Amanda. Amanda, your opening statement, please.
Thank you. So I mentioned that my initial background was HR when I joined CIS 15 years ago. And when working in HR, it was easy to see quite quickly that the industry was very male dominated, and that attracting women back then was going to be a challenge from a recruitment point of view. I became actively involved in promoting women in security, initially as a member of ASIS UK as part of their Women in Security chapter. And this involved arranging events to attract and promote women into the industry. The lack of women in a number of sectors was really under the spotlight then: facilities management, scientists, engineers. Virtually all industries at the time were formalising women's focus groups. It became very apparent very quickly that the lack of women in the industry was only one area, though, that we lacked as an industry, and that we were just touching the surface. What about underrepresentation, such as disability, sexual orientation within the industry? So although my initial connection with the industry was very much around women, I feel that it is a much broader subject now. The world is changing. We are trying to attract a diverse multitude of new talent to the industry. And let's face it, we are an industry that allows our workforce to be referred to as guards still, and often manned guards rather than security professionals. And therefore, in my opinion, we must address the overall perception of the industry if we are going to attract people to it. How do I feel that we fare up as an industry? I'm going to refer to the SIA statistics recently published March 2021. So out of over 400,000 licence holders in the UK, 89.94% male, 10.16% female, no surprises there, I don't think. Licenses by nationality, British 70%, Europe Economic Area 13%, rest of the world 16%. And age is interesting because 18 to 25-year-olds only represent 9.84% of the licensed security professionals in the UK. Again, on the other end of the age spectrum, 56 to 65-year-olds represent 15.9%. You know, interestingly, the report didn't touch on any other demographics. So, you know, what does that tell us? In my opinion, the security industry has a long way to go to achieve a true culture of equality and diversity and inclusion. As with the Women in Security initiatives, our industry and many others tend to jump on the bandwagon. We tend to follow suit rather than really looking at what is the real objective for us as an industry, and how are we going to achieve that.
Thank you very much indeed. Excellent. So some good stuff there. We can come back to you on in a minute. Can I ask you, the audience, if you'd like to get a question, use the question and answer button at the bottom of your screen. Get your question in early and we'll endeavour to come to it once we've heard from all the panellists. Without further ado then, let's go to Fidelma. And Fidelma, your opening statement, please.
Well, as I said when I was introducing myself, I come to security issues from the standpoint of someone who lives in a society emerging from conflict. So we all know that when a society is moving from conflict to peace building, that reform of policing is often an essential part of that. So at that point, when we move beyond the conflict and we start to build peace, it opens up an opportunity to think about security and to think about policing. So there are a number of issues that emerge when we talk about equality and diversity in that system of reform or process of reform. And one is that peace building requires equality. An ethical peace can't emerge without developments in equality across all aspects of society, including the security sector. In societies such as mine, policing tends to be highly masculinized. You often have a police force that really acts as a counterinsurgency force. So when that's opened up to more diversity, and a greater emphasis is placed on equality, then we start to see those militarized and masculinized elements of security breaking down. And at a pragmatic level, in a society such as mine, we need diversity because we have a history of particular groups distrusting the police force. So an opportunity opened up for us, and gender equality was one of the values that started to emerge in terms of security. And I suppose speaking to issues of what can be done, I don't have time, but we have a mixed picture, I think, in terms of how well we've done in creating a police force in particular that has a higher level of diversity and encourages a greater representation of women within its ranks. So we ended up really, we had 12.8% representation of women in the police service at the point when the peace agreement was delivered. And we are now up to nearly 30. So still under a third, but certainly, I suppose it's quite a period of time. We would expect progress. In terms of applications, when I was doing a little bit of research for this, the figure that I found was 3 out of 10 applicants are women currently. So we've obviously processes in there that have helped, but the one thing I would say, having looked at different aspects and including issues of LGBT plus people and security in Northern Ireland, is that we are still working to break what you might call the misogynistic shell of security, but work is ongoing, and I suppose our peace process shaped how that work on those issues developed.
Thank you very much indeed. Fascinating. I'm sure we're going to come back to that insight. Clearly, in Northern Ireland, you've got a special sort of set of issues about equality. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Don't forget, if you'd like to get your questions in, please use the question and answer button at the bottom of your screen. And as soon as we've heard from our final panelists, we'll endeavour to involve you. So without further ado, then let's hear from Emma. Emma, your opening statement, please.
Thanks, Martin. Hi, everyone. I've worked obviously in the security sector for quite some time, and I don't think diversity is anything new. I think it's significantly more prominent now than it's ever been, and quite rightly too. And we all know that obviously a diverse workforce brings lots of value to the organisations. You know, we've all got, you know, different genders, different backgrounds, different experiences. All of that adds to the culture of an organisation and how the organisation, the pulse of the organisation, how it lives and breathes. But I think in the main, many of our organisations have a strategy for inclusion and diversity. We've all got policies and procedures around it. We're all encouraging it. And but I think that varies from sector to sector, and how the strategies are developed vary from sector to sector. Amanda's given us some great facts and figures around our security sector as a whole, or the licensed part of our security sector, which is great. But if you think equally about things like the tech sector, how are they faring, and how are we as a security sector faring in comparison? So if you take the tech sector, or I found out some stats around Apple, you know, their global workforce is made up of 66% male, 34% female. White 47%, Asian 27%, Indigenous 14%, and 3% multiracial. So, but what we don't know is what factors influence the diversity and the statistics around it. You know, it could be circumstance, it could be geography, it could be subject matter knowledge, it could be simple things such as flexible working environments, you know, and people having that ability to work flexibly. So I think it's quite interesting now, but what are we doing as a sector? Well, as I say, I've been in the commercial sector for quite some time. And obviously prior to that, you know, military and government. So I've been predominantly working in a male dominated environment all of my working career, but it's changed, and it's good to see that change. And certainly in the commercial security sector, as some of the figures that I found, is that as a whole of the security sector, not just the licensable part of it, 79% of it is still male, with 21% of it female. So we've got a long way to go. We've come a long way, but we've still got a long way to go with it. Our sector has traditionally been known as, you know, a second, third career type profile person, male, white. And again, that profile has now changed. And quite rightly so, but equally our profession has changed, and I think we need to bear that in mind when we're thinking about how the sector has changed from, you know, a diversity point of view. So, you know, many years ago we were kind of looking at the physical aspect of security. Now it's much broader. It's cyber, it's risk, it's physical as well, it's people, and with that brings a way to work differently. So the security sector is not just about, you know, a security officer in a uniform. It's very, very diverse, but I think perceptions have always, from an outsider looking in, the perception has always been of that. And now clearly it's very different, and that brings people into the sector because we do get subject matter knowledge experts in different areas of risk, cyber and the like. And that brings the diversity of people into the sector. You know, we've got lots of initiatives that are going on, and don't get me wrong, I still think we've got a long way to go, but we've got initiatives, you know, Amanda has mentioned women in security, which she's heavily involved with. We've got a number of initiatives around women, young people's working groups, you know, encouragement, mentoring, bringing people into the sector, not just about it coming from police or government backgrounds. And also the recruitment from universities and even almost at school age of bringing people into the sector. And that will, I guess, help to change the diversity within our sector. But I also think we need to look at other things such as, you know, how we work flexibly. We all know now, 15 months down the line, that working flexibly is more important now than ever. And that's how, you know, we need to look at as a sector how we seek to achieve that. How do we give people that? We're all going to be working much more remotely. So I think we have to start thinking about the pandemic and what influence that plays on diversity and particularly inclusion. You know, people being connected more when they're working remotely. This is all going to add to the diversity. And also, you know, I mean, this goes for any sector, but develop people to be the best that they can be. And I think that whilst we've got lots of initiatives going on in the sector, there's a lot more that we can do there. I just kind of want to sort of summarise my, I guess, my statement by something that actually a colleague told me whilst we were talking about this very subject, and I was saying that I was coming on here. And what she said was really important. And I actually think it comes from her husband who works in this particular field, but I think it's really relevant that we should all take on board. And the statement, which is very simple, is diversity is a fact, inclusion is a choice. Choose inclusion. And that for me resonated really well, and I think kind of sums it up for us all.
Thank you very much indeed, Emma. Fantastic. Okay, 3 good opening statements then, 3 good sets of issues. I had a question in advance, and the question was this. I'll come to you first, Amanda, and then Fidelma, I'll come to you if that's all right. And the question is this, about what constitutes diversity? Because in your opening statements between you, we got to talk about LBGT, we got to talk about religion and ethnic differences. We've got to speak about gender differences. Disability was mentioned, I think, by you, Amanda. And I'm just wondering, is the aim that a good organisation reflects the diverse, it reflects what is the actual representation in the population? Is that what we're supposed to be doing, Amanda? I just want to try and get a sense of what we mean by diversity.
I'm going to give you a really simple answer on diversity. So to me, diversity is purely the mix of workforce, and that mix can constitute various factors, various groups, but it's not just, I don't think it's just diversity as in the usual ones that we've mentioned, characteristics like gender and ethnicity. It's also inherent diversity. Or acquired diversity. So if you think about an employee who's gained a deep appreciation of different cultures from working overseas, or the male manager who relates well to female colleagues after working with an all-female team, it's the diversity of experience and background. It's a combination rather than it being, again, I'm sort of going back to that tick box view of diversity, where somebody gives you a list and you tick it off and you say, right, okay, to be a good organisation, I've got to have a mix of these various groups. I think it's broader than that. And I think sometimes we're trying too hard to tick the box rather than to keep it simple and look at a mixed workforce.
Yeah, I think that's helpful, actually, Amanda. I mean, Fidelma, when I was doing the sort of preparation for this webinar, I listened to a couple of podcasts, and there, as Amanda says, there is this tendency sometimes to think, right, if we're diverse, I need to have so many of this and so many of that group and so many of that group, which almost becomes undoable and maybe is a distraction. In a country where, of course, you've got those really big differences in cultures and religions, and therefore which manifest it in different ways. Are there ways of thinking about this, or ways of beginning to manage it that makes it perhaps more meaningful or more doable?
Well, from my perspective, we can't think about diversity and inclusion without thinking about the category of exclusion. So we have to start from the foundation, the starting position of, well, why do we not have diversity, and why do we not have inclusion, and why do we not have equality? And I think that's one angle to come at it from. And I do think if we explore it from that angle, we'll start to identify barriers. So I think what is diversity can be answered by lifting those barriers and giving people an opportunity to flourish in the careers that they want to flourish. And that involves breaking down a whole number of barriers. So for example, if I can take an aspect of policing in Northern Ireland, entry into the police required a push and pull test, which disadvantages women. They had I think it was an 8% success rate, and they changed that and it moved up to something, I think it was into the 70s. If you're watching this, please do not quote me on those figures, but roughly around that. So you can see how one simple modification can remove a barrier, can remove an exclusion.
Thank you very much indeed. Let me come to you, Emma, on this. Emma, I wonder whether it's very good to praise, and of course for very good reasons, the women in security groups. But as far as I know, we don't have LGBT insecurity, and I don't know that we have handicapped insecurity. And I just wonder whether that is a reflection of us not getting security, not getting what we need to do, or whether that's just an unrealistic way forward. I'm just trying to get a sense of this, what constitutes diversity. Your thoughts, Emma?
I'm with Amanda and Fidelma in terms of diversity. You know, it's not just about gender or age. Of course, it covers all the, the groups that you've just talked about, LGBT, disabilities and so on. I think as a sector, like I said, we've got a long way to go, but we also need to make, can only make so many small steps to make up the bigger steps. And I think it's more about, Fidelma's talked about barriers. We do need to look at the barriers of people coming into, what's preventing people coming into the sector. Are the opportunities there, and are those opportunities presented, attractive to different groups, whether it's ethnic minorities, disability. Typically, I'm just sort of thinking out loud a little bit on your comment, but we are traditionally perceived as a sector that provides, that requires a physical being, and so maybe that's a deterrent for people with a disability. Now, clearly that's not the case because of the diversity of our sector now, but it's certainly going to be a barrier in terms of perception. So, you and I have had many conversations over the years, Martin, around perceptions of the security industry, and maybe that is one of the barriers, and maybe we have to change some of that before we can have a much more inclusive type of sector.
Okay, thank you very much. We've got some questions flowing in now, so let's see if we can start to tackle these as we go. So question for all of you, and Fidelma, I'll start with you. do you think that we're there with gender equality and security, and or do you think that there are signs that improvements are going to be made? I just want to get a sense of, all three of you in a way made the point that it's getting better. And I just wonder whether we can continue on the current trajectory, or whether it's just not good enough and we're going to have to step up. Now, the question was about gender in particular. I'm happy for any aspect to be considered. It's a matter of, okay, so let's not get too good about congratulating ourselves, because you gave figures which suggest that it wasn't good enough yet. What next? What's the step up needs to be done? So if Emma, I'll come to you first, then Emma second.
Well, Alan, you're asking a feminist researcher if what we're doing in security is good enough. And I think you can predict my answer. No, because security sits within a bigger society that is full of prejudices and full of ideas about men and women's capacities. And also our family, our economic structures create a whole set of inequalities, and it would be unrealistic to think that they wouldn't be reflected in all sectors of society. So I think we need to keep moving in a progressive direction. We need to do it faster if we're serious about equality and inclusion. And I would also say that it's not simply about increasing numbers, and it's not necessarily about the career advancement of individual women. I don't think that we can create really meaningful change unless there are changes in work cultures. And I don't think that, that is just something that is unique to the security sector. I mean, I think, work cultures and how women are located in those cultures needs to be examined, and how masculinized structures and processes and values become embedded in those structures. And they're not conducive to equality, diversity, and inclusion.
Okay, thank you. And Emma, that probably strikes a chord with you. You've led organisations, you run your own business, of course, and you've been the leader in different voluntary organisations. I just wonder whether what you see as the next steps in this, because I guess to some extent it does come down to that sort of leadership initiative. Yeah,
definitely. We do, we're not where we should be. Not by any stretch of the imagination. Are many of us happy about it? Probably not. Certainly for myself, no. We are still at the stage where, and this is not just reflective of the security industry, but we are still at the stage where we're saying this is the first woman to do this, that, or the other. Now I use just one form of diversity, but the security industry had been around a long time. I was the first female. There was a big thing made of that. We had the second female. There's a big thing made of the second chairman being the second female chairman, and we shouldn't be at that point. We're almost celebrating the fact, but actually, what's the difference? What makes me any different to the chairman before me and going forward? I think we have to work together in terms of our sector. I think we've still got to continue to work together, not just from a professional association point of view, but actually the organisations within the professional sector. So yes, we've got licensing, and I know that a lot of organisations manage and look at their targets around diversity, but it's not enough just to look at managing targets. And ultimately, we want the best people for the job, and and that's ultimately what anybody's looking for and coming down to. But we've got a long way to go, and we need to look at I touched on some of it in my opening statement. We need to look at, perception of the industry from outside, and that's always going to be a challenge for us. Changing that perception, and with that, we will become, I guess, more attractive as a sector to different different ethnicities, backgrounds, experiences. And I think that combined with the work that some of the associations are doing in schools and colleges, and the depth and diversity of the sector as it grows and continues to grow in different fields such as cyber risk, all the things that I've mentioned already, then I think that will, I think it needs a combination of all of those factors for this to work, and for us to take those bigger steps forward that we need to. We are way past saying this is the first female in this, or this is the, you know, first Black person at that. We shouldn't be in that position. It should be routine. It should be business as normal.
Yeah, you see, and Amanda, when you listen to that, there is a sense in which we can say if we wish it's getting better, but it's still not that good, is it?
No.
What next?
In a word, no.
What do we do next?
I think that there's definitely a shift. We're starting to go in the right direction. I think that there's lots of industry interest and groups that are working within their own organisation to achieve diversity. However, I think that they are working in silos pretty much. So some good examples are in attracting new people into the industry. You've got things like Ernst & Young have got a very good Secure Futures programme where they are bringing young people from the age of 16 up into business, encouraging them to join the security industry in all sorts of different roles, whether that's in intelligence, whether that's in actual physical security, technical security. So, you know, that's a good example of how to attract younger, diverse talent to the industry. I think that the Security Institute is working very hard. They have their diversity and inclusion group, special interest group. So there's lots of things going on. I feel that we need to come together though, and there needs to be that governing body, the SIA, and the government in general, that needs to support our industry more, because we keep going back to the same word, perception. You know, diversity will come naturally, I believe, but we've got to get people into the industry very young, and we've got to change the perception of the industry so that it's more attractive.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. I mean, I'm going to just strip with, if I might, Amanda, because we've got two questions that build on quite what you've been saying. So Ken Smith has been saying, if I can summarize what Ken Smith's saying and use my words, but his idea, you said yourself, the stats, there aren't many young and it's looking old. And of course, the further up the ladder you go, I can't prove this, but I suspect it's the same. And Neil Caton has said the similar thing. How can we encourage more young people to become security professionals? This perhaps needs to be not left to the security sector, because we're not very good at it. Would you agree?
I think we haven't been very good at it. I think we've got to become bolder, more vocal. We've got to challenge media to stop using stereotypes. For example, you know, if you look on This Morning Britain, you'll have somebody referring to security guards, or you know, or on the news, they'll talk about guarding or manned guarding, or, you know, we are security professionals. We are an industry that is a major contributor to the economy, to safety. We look after our people, and we should be respected more. We should be recognised more. And I think that if we can achieve that, and we can be a bit bolder and braver and get that message out there more to the wider public, and have support in doing so and funding to do so, then I think that we may raise our profile, and in turn we will attract a more diverse talent pool.
Okay, Fidelma, when your opening statement, you just made the point about policing and about the sort of gender bias there and about the need to change some of the practices. I just wonder whether, I mean, for that, you could you could say exactly the same for security. And indeed, one of the speakers recently on a webinar, actually about sexism and security, one of the panelists said, whatever you do, don't base practice on the police because they're useless at it. And that's all we do. I mean, would you say there is a good example a male-dominated world like security can look to get frameworks and reference points for transitions which are really meaningful rather than just work in progress?
Well, I mean, I think thinking across the board about how you generate more equality, regardless of what kind of equality that is and which identity groups you're looking at. The first thing I think that has to happen is that it becomes a very high priority. Okay, so often we pay lip service, or we have tick boxes, or we have stats. You need champions within organizations who have the proper knowledge base and the proper training to be able to lead a gender equality strategy. And I would agree with Amanda. I mean, I think there is a role for government in supporting these kinds of initiatives. Definitely, I would agree with that as well. And I think then you have to have, whatever you've set your priorities, I think you have to have measurable targets. And I think your successes have to be measured through not just quantitative data, but also qualitative data that is delivered or collected confidentially and anonymously from the people who work in your organization. And in that way, you can start to inform your priorities and your policies and make them more fitted to your context and more meaningful in their outcomes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I'm going to just stick with you for a second, if I might. Gordon Knight's got a question, and he says, picking up on just what you've just said, actually, living in a country, South Africa, where the government has become involved in quota-based diversity, it seems to me that where possible, the security industry must try to solve this internally rather than allowing outside interference. Which implies something against quota-based diversity, I suppose. But when you talk about government intervention, do you mean that all women shortlists? And is that what we're trying to do here, or trying to insist that we have, in some regulated way, some activities to make changes? Is that the purpose, Fidelma, when you say government intervention?
No, I mean, I think government can support all organizations that are seeking to achieve greater gender equality and to take a more active role in it. I mean, if I think about how many events about gender equality I've been to at Westminster, etc. I mean, there's support in all different kinds of ways that the government can give. Quotas are difficult. While I agree with quotas myself, because I don't think that quotas are really giving anyone an advantage. They're just actually removing the most serious disadvantages, but that's a personal view. I think the problem is that other groups' perceptions of positive discrimination can actually act negatively or have negative effects on the group that the quotas are meant to support. So I can't answer a question about quotas in 1 minute.
No, but thank you. You've given us an insight. I mean, the interesting thing for me is you put on the agenda that you can see some merit in it. And of course, other fields have done this, as we know. Thank you. I'm going to come to Emma, if I might. Emma, I just want to pick up on something that you put in your opening statement. And Seth Lindenfeld It's talking about the emphasis we place on former military law enforcement in the security sector, which if what we're told is to be believed, this is becoming less reliant on that sector. But still, I suppose it's that sort of thing, isn't it, that feeds the bias. I mean, two other organisations that have got more or less the same problem, face more or less the same issues, and yet are a common recruiting pool. And it's not really building on diversity if we do that. Is it, Emma?
I agree with you, Martin. I agree. You know, yeah, second, third career, coming from military, coming from government. I am one of that person coming from both of those backgrounds. Second career for me. I think our recruiting pools are wrong. I kind of almost want to be a little bit controversial in terms of some of the other comments made. I do think we have a responsibility as security professionals ourselves to change our sector. And I've always had this view, and I've expressed this view publicly before. You know, we are the security sector. We are what makes up the security sector. And if we want to change perception and we want to change our sector, there's going to be no one better to change it than us. And we've done that.
It forces change, though, Emma. The point would be it would force our hand in a way which we've been relatively slow to react.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and I do think that there is some there is merit in, you know, having influence from outside of our sector. Of course, there is, you know, and you know, potentially yes, government influence around that, but I don't think it should solely rely on any one either body, organisation, or group. But we have, as a sector, have a responsibility, and we should be the ones that are changing and encouraging that. When we as senior security professionals are recruiting people, why are we not considering how we're recruiting people? The professional associations are doing a lot around recruitment, talking, you know, as I discussed earlier, around students in schools, in universities. They're talking, you know, to different diverse groups now, and that's going to change and shape things. Of course it is. But it's how we as professionals behave and respond to the different situations in our daily working lives. So are we recruiting people from different backgrounds, different, you know, I'm not saying to do that over preference, but ultimately you are looking for the best person for the job. But if we want our sector to change, we have to change it. We're part of that cultural change.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. We're running out of time, so I just want to go very quickly, if I might, Amanda, very briefly, if you wouldn't mind, Amanda. Would you agree with John Reeves, who says that don't we just need to accept that such deep-seated cultural changes take time to achieve, and that we're not doing too badly in heading in the right direction?
I would agree that they do take time, without a doubt. But I would also, and I would agree that we are heading in the right direction, but I also agree with Emma in the fact that we do have to drive it. I think outside support is an advantage, but as an industry, we do have to drive forward the change, because otherwise it's going to remain slow, is what I would say. And really for us, it'll be good if we can speed it up as much as possible, and make the change as quickly as possible. Okay.
Panellists, thank you so much. We could go on. There's more questions to address. I've got two in advance. I haven't had a chance for it, but thank you so much for your time. We're running out of time, and we're gonna be returning to this. And thank you very much indeed for your questions. I'm sorry I couldn't get to everything. An absolutely fascinating discussion, and I guess this is a point where perhaps an area where we do need to do more thought leadership, do need to do more thinking about the different ways in which we can respond to the problem. So I'm very grateful for the insights that were generated there. Very quickly, final comments from me. Just to let you know that we've got a study on security officers, those on the front line. I know Amanda's supporting this, and could we encourage security officers everywhere in these countries to complete this survey? We want to know what they think about their role. Individuals aren't named, companies aren't named. It's about getting individuals' views around the world. So please do encourage that if you can. Just to say that the outstanding security performance entries are open in Kenya, Romania, and the United States currently, but they're going to open soon in other countries. So stand by. And the Technical Economic Crime Awards in the UK, they're open too. So start putting those good people forward, those good teams, those good companies who exemplify good practice. Let's find out who they are and let's showcase it. It's a way to improvement. The cyber OSPAs, they're open as well. They're supported by all these associations. If you're a member of a cyber association and it's not here, let us know. We're engaging all these associations around the world. The cyber OSPAs are open, a global award scheme for the cyber security sector. And finally to say, we are going to be going through it all over again on Tuesday, 111th webinar on Tuesday. And the topic then is, how competent are security officers and why does it matter? Also just note that next week, we normally have them on a Tuesday and a Thursday, but it's going to be Tuesday and Wednesday next week. And on Wednesday, we're talking about drones and security, balancing the threat with the opportunity. So I do hope that you'll be able to join us again. Thank you very much indeed to my panel. Thank you very much indeed to the audience. Don't forget, a copy of the webinar will be on the website tomorrow, as well as a blog. Hopefully we'll see you next Tuesday. Until then, or wherever you are in the world, stay safe.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.